Morning or afternoon. Today's chapter 12, lecture B. Excuse you in the back. Do mind the people in the choir. Okay, today we're going to talk about the crusade against slavery. Yesterday we talked about religious reform, some reform in society, utopian societies, the Shakers, the people that had no sex. We obviously know how that went. But today we're going to focus on the crusade against slavery. So we're going to focus on the first thing, colonization. If you look at the reaction quiz for chapter 12, it deals with a paper dealing with colonization. This concept was those whites willing to contemplate an end to bondage before the 1830s pushed what was known as colonization, and that essentially is the deportation of African Americans to either the Caribbean, back to Africa, or Central America, and allow them to resettle and have their own way of life. The American Colonization Society, founded in 1816, pushed for gradual abolition and established Liberia on the coast of Africa. Liberia still exists as a country to this day, but this all rested on the notion that America was a white society and blacks could never gain equality. So it's a very racial thing. Now, this is the step in a right direction as far as ending slavery, but it's not obviously probably the correct one. Most blacks oppose this idea because most blacks had never been to Africa, the Caribbean, or other that were in America. And so the idea that they could go back and start a society was feeble because they wouldn't know how to survive. All they knew was the United States. They were American through and through. And so though the concept was noble in its attempt, it was very, very misguided. Now, as you will see in the reaction quiz for this week, colonization actually did gain quite a bit of steam. Even people such as President Lincoln thought it might be worth exploring more. Now, militant abolitionism in the late 1830s shift from gradual to more immediate. It was a sin and violated the DOI. Appeal to the colored citizens of the world by free black David Walker died from mysterious cause in 1830. Most likely, this free black was murdered. The Liberator by William Lloyd Garrison, one of the most famous in 1831, became the permanent voice for it. And going back to DOI, Declaration of Independence, you're going to start to see people now say we need to end slavery. And one of the most famous that you'll see later after Garrison will be John Brown and the whole incident that happened in Kansas and later out in Virginia. Now, William Lloyd Garrison advocated blacks were part of society and should be shipped away. And you're going to see, though the colonization movement does gain steam, it will die away when people realize the folly of it. Now, spreading the abolitionist message moved swiftly through the North for obvious reasons. More of the North had hardly any slaves, and it was more popular. Used printed material to get the message out to pamphlets. American Anti-Slavery Society, founded in 1833, over 100,000 will join. Garrison movement was the most well-known protagonist for it, or propagandist for it. Theodore Weld, young preacher, helped to make it a mass consistency in connecting slavery to a sin. Up before this, religion had been used to justify slavery and to keep people in their place, but now people are saying, no, slavery is wrong. Though it has occurred, it's not a correct way of life, and it is a sin. Slavery and the moral suasion. Many Southerners feared that the abolitionists intended to spark a slave insurrection. Nat Turner was unaware of Garrison's writings. Most abolitionists rejected violence as a means to end slavery. Most of them wanted it to end without violence or war. Moral suasion. Slaveholders must be convinced of the sinfulness of their ways and the North of its complicity in this peculiar institution. Thus, the moral suasion rested on we needed to convince slaveholders their sin and their error of their ways, and those in the North were complacent in part of it for allowing it to happen. Focus not on political parties, but awaken the nation to the moral evil of slavery. The Crusade Against Slavery 3. A New Vision of America tries to reinvigorate the idea of freedom, or rejuvenate the idea of freedom as a truly universal entitlement. Abolitionists debated the constitutional relationship to slavery, though it allowed it. Some would argue that it violated it in its very essence. Garrison burned a copy of it, meaning the Constitution. Douglas believed it offered no protection, which he's not wrong. Invented the concept of equality before the law, spread the definition of brutality, used Declaration of Independence preamble as a condemnation of slavery, and then used the Liberty Bell as a symbol. So you can see through the 1830s, slavery is going to become heavily debated and a much more hot topic. Now, black and white abolitionism. Now, unfortunately, you're going to have two sides to abolitionism. You're going to have the white side and then the black side, and they're not going to agree on how it should be approached. Blacks played a key role in this movement. Frederick Douglass, obviously one of the most vocal. The introduction of Uncle Tom's Cabin in the 1850s by Harriet Beecher Stowe sold more than 1 million copies by 1854, and it showed the cruelty of slavery and really opened up Northerners' eyes more to it. Modeled on an autobiography of fugitive Josiah Henson, it personalized slaves and had a huge impact on the movement. It started to hold meetings. People started to hold meetings after this and conventions apart from whites. So the white movements of the 30s are going to separate, and the blacks are going to have a much more different approach in the 1840s and 50s. At every opportunity, blacks rejected the idea of pretensions as a land of liberty, articulated the idea of color-blinded citizenship, meaning America was blinded to true equality, that the whites didn't fully appreciate or understand the plight, and they were blinded from the Declaration, even in the Constitution. 1852, Frederick Douglass gave the greatest oration on American slavery. He asked, "What to the slave is the 4th of July?" He answered, "With the festivals revealed the hypocrisy of a nation that proclaimed the belief in liberty, yet daily committed practices more shocking and bloody than did any other country on earth." Meaning, the 4th of July meant nothing to blacks. It was just another day of the year. Whites would go around celebrating, but really, what were they celebrating? It was their freedom at the cost of others. Black and white abolition too. Gentlemen of property and standing. At first, aroused violent hostility from some Southerners. Gentlemen of property and standing, merchants were close commercial to ties to the South, led mobs to disrupt abolition meetings in northern cities. Meaning, some people that would be economically affected by this wanted to stop any talk of abolitionism. In 1837, Elijah Lovejoy was killed defending his press in Alton, Illinois. In 1838, a mob in Philadelphia burned to the ground Pennsylvania Hall built for abolitionist meetings. With unspoken approval of Andrew Jackson's Postmaster General, Southerners burned abolitionist literature they removed from the mail. Gag rule was passed to suppress petitions in Washington, D.C. to end slavery. That will be repealed in 1844. Gag rule aroused considerable resentment in the North. One would also get those who didn't support black rights, but convenience slavery threatened them. So you're going to have groups of people in the North that will try to stop some of the abolitionist movements. Some of it comes from the South, people that move up north. But the reason people are going to want to stop it is because it's economic tide. If people's livelihood, their positions are going to be threatened, they are going to stand against it. So abolition movements of this period definitely gained steam, and they will come to a head in the late 1850s and early 1860s, which will help result in the American Civil War. Now, understand, many in the North are going to be against slavery, but they're not necessarily going to be on board with the abolitionist movement or disrupting the status quo. And many of them were still inherently racist. One group that's going to be gain some steam, but it's going to take them another generation or two to get rights received, is women. You're going to see women, the feminist movement, which we'll talk about on our next lecture, will gain movement in this period, and it will start to expand. Now, women and African Americans will try to work together, but the reality is, just like there was white abolitionists and black abolitionist movement, the woman's right, there's going to be divisions with that end as well. Have a great day.